I want to talk to you today about a couple of auctions and the kind of auctions that these were and the things that happen when people have an auction like these. But first I got to talk to you about my friend Mike Bridwell. Mike and I met when we were probably, I'm going to guess 9, maybe 10 years old. And I don't remember exactly when it was or how it was, but I know I'm pretty sure that it was either at the Boys Club or up at Central Foundry at the Little League Diamond. Because Mike went to Stalker School up in the North End, and I went to Lincoln School over on the East Side. And he lived, out there on P Street, north of 11th or 12th, somewhere in there. Can't remember exactly which two streets he lived between, but he lived there and I lived on East 15th Street between the F and E. So our paths didn't cross too much until we got old enough to go to the Boys Club, or we got old enough to go play Little League Baseball, and then both of us did that, and I'm sure we met doing that. And over the years we became good friends and did a lot of things together. One of the things that we shared that we both loved as young adults was bird hunting. And I hunted birds until just recently. I'm 70, almost 75 years old, and I just quit about a year ago. But Mike Bridwell he and I became good friends. And he's as good a friend as I had over the years. And I knew his first wife, too, when I was a boy. She and I went to Lincoln School together from 1st grade to 6th grade. And I knew her then, and I knew her after that. There's some good little stories I could tell about her, and especially her 11th birthday party. There's a lot of good stories in that one. But she became a friend of mine, too, and a good friend, and she still is my good friend. And I knew both of them, and they had a daughter named Amy, and I know her not as well as I should, maybe, not as well as I'd like to, but I know her. When I see her, I know who she is, and I can speak to her. But they got a divorce, Mike and Vicki did, and they both got remarried. And then Mike died as a young man. I think he was 58. I was surprised the other day when I looked to see when he died that how young he was and how long ago that was. It just seems like it wasn't that long ago. But they both got married, and Mike married a woman who was a little older than him. And I liked her okay. She was a decent woman. And I remained friends with her until today, really. She wouldn't know who I was today. She's got dementia, but we were friends. I never did understand why Mike married her. She just wasn't what I expected him to do when he did it. But anyway, he got married again, so did Vicki. Well, after Mike died, Sandra, that was his second wife's name, she became an acquaintance of Bob Allen. Bob Allen was an auctioneer, and Bob talked her into having a sale with a bunch of Mike's stuff, and they put together a sale bill and made a contract, and Bob went over there to their place on Sunny Acres Drive, and he had an auction for Sandra and sold a bunch of Mike's things. It was amazing how much fishing equipment he had. They sold tackle box after tackle box, case after case, basket after basket of fishing equipment that he'd accumulated over the years. And I think they sold his boat and 2 or 3 fish detectors and all sorts of things that they sold that day in that sale. And he had some old tractors. I don't know. He had an Oliver, and I don't know. He had 2 or 3 John Deeres, I think, maybe Alice Chalmers. I don't remember all the tractors he had, but Mike liked old tractors and bought them and worked on them, tinkered around with them. I won't say he restored them, but he got them in good shape where they'd run. He could play with them. He enjoyed doing that, and he had some of those, and they sold those that day. But what I want to say about that is this. They sold a lot of other things too that was Mike's that shouldn't have been put in an auction. At least not the way they were put in an auction. Because that day I was there, I knew about the sale and how I knew about it. I knew about the sale that they were having it, and I keep up on sales pretty well, and I recognized Saunders' name, and I recognized the address, and so I knew that they were selling Mike's stuff. But his family, his brothers and sisters, and his daughter and grandkids, I don't think they knew about that sale that day. I don't think they even knew it existed because Saunders didn't bother to tell them. And forget bothering to tell them about the sale. Saunders should have said, she should have got a hold of them and said, I'm having a sale of some of Mike's stuff, and there's a lot of this stuff that's personal to you. Come by before I have the sale and go through this. There's things in here you want. You can have them. That's what should have happened, but it didn't. Didn't happen. And what I'm saying about that, and I'll probably say it again before this video is over, if you have that's the result of some things that happen in a broken marriage, in a broken home, that carry on for years and years and years, and shouldn't happen. If you're in a situation like that and you're still walking and breathing, you need to see to it that something like that's not going to happen to your stuff when you're gone. And I can say that from a personal experience myself. My parents were divorced, and when my dad died, his then wife and all her kids just took all her stuff, and I never had a chance to get any of it. Not that I cared about most of the stuff Dad had, and Dad wasn't a sentimental person. He didn't have keepsakes and things that he saved, but there were things that I would have liked to have had some personal thing that I remembered of my dad's, and I didn't get an opportunity to do that. And I don't have a single thing in my possession that belonged to my dad that say I can remember this from my dad or from my childhood. I have nothing like that. And that kind of thing shouldn't happen. So I'm telling you that right up front. You got a situation like that potentially could happen in your family. You need to fix it. Do something to fix that. Let's go on. I was at a sale. Mike's sale. Bob Allen had it. And I've talked about Bob Allen before. I'm not going to talk about him today. I'm just going to say he's the guy that had that sale. And at that sale I bought some things because they were Mike Bridwell things, and Mike Bridwell was my friend. I bought some things because I wanted them for that reason. And then I bought some other things, or things like I'm talking about, like a high school diploma, a college diploma, some personal papers, some other little odds and end things that should have never been put in a sale, that should have been given to his Mike's descendants, but they got put in that sale. I ended up with them. I was going through the boxes of different things I bought, and I sorted that kind of thing out, and I called Amy and I said, hey, I got this stuff from sale that Saunders had, your dad's stuff, and if you want it, I'll bring it to you. And she, of course, she wanted it. I took it over to her. And but there was a lot of other stuff like that. I had no idea what it was or any significance that it might have had. There was a lot of stuff like that that shouldn't have went where it went, but it did. But I did buy some things at that sale. I'm going to show them to you. You've seen them in another video already, probably, because I made I make these videos, and I made one about Redbird's Whistle. It's part of the name of it. I don't know the whole name of it, but it's a story about Mike. And I bought this knife. That's a case. That's an old case, double X. Knife collectors could tell you more about it than I can. I don't know anything about knives or knife collecting. I just know that's a case double X because it said so right there on the blade. The reason I bought it was that knife belonged to Mike Bridwell, and he was my friend. And I wanted it, and I've carried it in my pocket for several years now. You say, well, Luke, you carried that knife, maybe your kids. Well, no. I'll tell you about that in a minute. That same auction, I bought these. If you don't know what those are dog whistles. And those are those little kind. It might like those little whistles that were real shrill. And I didn't like them. This whistle right here is mine. It's a whistle I used. It's what's called an Acme Thunderer, and you can see it's a way bigger whistle than this, and it's got more of a mellow sound to it than this. This thing was a little shrill whistle, but I bought those at that first sale that Sandra had of Mike's stuff back, I don't know, 15 years ago, whenever it was, and I've had them since then. This past summer, I went to another sale. I go to sales all the time. I went to a sale down at Orleans. Stephen Robinson was having a sale. And it was a sale, too, that I didn't know when I went to the sale that a lot of this stuff was stuff that Saunders family had put into sale, and a lot of it had belonged to Mike. I didn't know that. Didn't say anything about them in the advertising for this sale. I just happened to be at that sale that day and didn't know anything about any of the stuff that was there or that it belonged to Mike Bridwell. One of the things that was there was a Bedford High School letter sweater. It was a dark maroon letter sweater with a big white bee on it. It was in excellent condition. Amy told me later that Mike's name was embroidered inside the waistband of it. I didn't know that. I didn't see it. I just saw the sweater, and I recognized it for what it was. It was a Bedford High School letter sweater from my era. And so I decided I'd try to buy it, and I did. I did try to buy it. I didn't know that day that Derek Bridwell was there, and he was there because he knew about that sweater, and he bought it. So, Derek, I'm sorry. I don't think I was even second bidder on it. I quit before then, but I was, in part, one of the reasons that you had to pay more for that sweater than you would have, because I bid on it a little bit. If I'd have known it was Mike's, and not knowing you was there, I'd have probably recognized that you was there before it was over with, because that sweater would have brought a lot more than it did if I'd known it was Mike's, until I saw you were bidding on it. But anyway, that was one of the things that sold that day. Mike Bridwell's high school letter sweater in excellent condition. At those sales, they have a lot of the stuff that's the better stuff up front, on tables up there and against the wall. And that's where this stuff that belonged to Mike, most of it was, but not all of it. At noon, down there at Robinson's, they stop and they sell big items like tractors or cars or trucks or, big items like that. They stop and sell them at noon. And then they break off in two rings, and Stephen goes back to selling the stuff up front. And Tom Godfrey, his brother-in-law, he starts selling all that, sometimes pure trash out there on that end, but a lot of times good stuff out in there. He starts selling that at noon. And so they got two rings going. Well, that day, I'd looked around out there on the end, and there was one of them big plastic totes about, I don't know, 2.5 feet long. One of them kind that looked kind of like a laundry basket, maybe a little bigger. And it had some junk down in it, but it had a picture in it that I liked. And it was a picture of some bird dogs. And I could just see it, it was down in there and had some other stuff in there too. And I didn't get it out. I didn't want anybody to notice it if they hadn't noticed it. When I saw what that picture was, I liked it well enough that I thought, I'm going to try to buy that. And I didn't want anybody else to notice it, make it harder for me to buy. So I just kind of looked at it. I could see enough of it from without getting it out of there to know that I liked it well enough to try to buy it. But as it turned out, I was off watching them up front or something when they got to that, and it sold without me getting even a chance to buy it. Later on, I was over there looking around again and seeing where they were and how close they were to that picture, and I realized they'd already sold it, and I saw it sitting over in another spot. So I went over there and I thought, well, I'll take a better look at it anyway, and I reached down there and I got a hold of it, started to pull it out. The guy said, hey, that's my stuff. What are you messing up my stuff? And I said, well, sorry. I said, I just want to look at this picture. I seen it a while ago, and I thought about buying it, but I see that I've missed my opportunity. He said, yeah. He said, I bought it. He said, actually, my wife wanted that picture. And directly, here comes this woman up there, and she's, they're both, I don't know how old they are. Not as old as me, but they were older people. And he looked like me when I go to an auction sometimes. He looked like maybe he was homeless. Pretty scruffy looking, had on old auction clothes, I'd call him. And he's the kind of guy I wouldn't have put with that woman. She was all dressed up. She had on a floor-length skirt, and she had a silk scarf around her cloth. She had a little beret kind of a hat on. She had the jewelry, and she was dressed up and looking like a aristocrat or something. Come to find out, she was an artist. She had a little art studio where she made paintings and sold them and did stuff. She's telling me about her studio. Give me one of her cards. She said, I'm going to take that picture and I'm going to paint a bird dog using that as my model. She said, I'm going to paint my own picture like that. And I said, well, I'd like to have it. You can't have it, she said, now. But she says, when I get through with it, we can make an arrangement. And I said, well, I'd buy it. So we traded information. Well, I lost that information somewhere. And so I forgot about that and didn't come back to mind again. When I did think about it, I looked for that information I had of hers, and I didn't have it. Couldn't find it. I'll find it one of these days. I'll open up a drawer and there it'll be, but it might be in the glove box of my truck or something. I don't know where it is, but it wasn't where I thought I'd put it, so I lost it. Lost track of them. Till maybe 2-3 months later, just, about a month ago, I was down there at an auction, and I saw him. And when I started toward him, then I saw her too, and here she come up there to talk to him. And when I got to him, I said, hey, you remember me? And pointed to her, and she said, well, help me out. Where did we meet? I said, we met right here. I said, you bought a bird dog picture. And I liked it, and we traded information, and she said, oh yeah. She said, I made a painting from that. She said, a lawyer from Paley was in my studio and he liked it and I sold it. She said, it worked out real good. I said, well, have you still got that picture? She said, yes. And she said, you can have it if you want it. I said, well, I'd like a chance to buy it. She said, you don't have to buy it, just come and get it. She said, I'll give it to you. So I said, good. And we traded information again. That was on a Wednesday. And I can't tell you what Wednesday it was, but it was the Wednesday. If you look at B&L girls basketball schedule, I could tell you, because it was the Wednesday before the Saturday that they went to New Albany to play. And I thought, well, where that woman lives, not too far out of the way. When we go to New Albany, I'm going to shoot across there between Campbellsburg and that little place over on 150. I can't remember the name of it. She said, I'm going to shoot across there between them two places and find her. And so I did. I told Betty, I said, let's leave a little early. And we went, and I found her. And when we found her, she lived in a trailer. And there was a trailer there, and back behind us this little, like, one-room house, or maybe 2 rooms, I don't know. And that was her studio. I called her on the phone. I said, I'm in front of this trailer. And she said, Dad, I'm in the studio. It's behind the trailer. Come on back here. And so Betty and I went down there, and we went in. She was painting some snowmen to sell in a restaurant somewhere for Christmas decorations. And that day she wasn't all dressed up, so she did look like she belonged with him. He seen my truck sitting out there, and he come back there to check on her, make sure everything was okay. And we had a good little talk. But I got my pictures. I said, she said, that picture you want's right over there. And I went over and got it, picked it up, and you can see the corner of it in this video. It's right there. I got it hanging right there right now. I'll show you some pictures of it here in just a minute. But I picked it up and started looking at it. And my goodness, it had 2 dogs in it. And the dogs, they looked exactly, the main dog in the picture, he looked just like a dog that I used to have. The dog's name was Dub. He's one of my favorite dogs. In fact, I wrote a book about basketball and bird dogs, and that's my beautiful granddaughter right there on the top. But them 2 dogs down there on the bottom, that orange and white pointer in the forefront, his name's Dub, and the dog in that picture looks enough like him to have been him. And the dog behind it looked like one of the litter mates, the females that was in the same litter that he was, that I raised. And so, man, I was tickled to death. That picture was a better picture than I even thought about it being. And I looked at this picture and I noticed something else about it. Down on the bottom of the frame, it had a plaque, little like they put on trophies and such, you know, and little gold piece of metal that had engraving on it, and the engraving said Ole Lum, O-L-E-L-U-M, Ole Lum. And then below the Ole Lum it said 2003 Bedford Junior High School. I said, Betty, come here and look at this. And I got her over there and I said, look at that. And I said, what do you think of that? And she said, that's too much of a coincidence. She said, that's got to be something related to Mike Bridwell. I said, absolutely it does. I told the lady, I said, I had a friend, he had a bird dog. He wasn't an orange and white dog like this, but he was a big old liver and white raw bone pointer, and his name was Lum. And he affectionately referred to him all the time as Ole Lum. And he was a teacher at Bedford Junior High School. 2003 would have been about the time he retired. So this is a miracle. This is miraculous that the way I've come about having this picture here in my hands and then seeing that, and it belonged to my good friend Mike Bridwell. So I took the picture, and Betty and I left, and we went to the ball game. Later on, I started trying to find out more about it. I called Amy Scarpellini. She's Mike's daughter. I told her the story I just told you about that picture. She said it had to be something that they gave him for retirement. That's about the time he retired. And she said the Industrial Arts Department must have given him that. She said, I don't remember it, but that's what it's got to be. And I thought, it does. That is what it has to be. And I just think that story just a little miracle. Amy said it's a God thing. Something God did to get that picture where it belonged. And I don't know whether it's a God thing or not, but it's something. That's something special for that picture, me to end up with that picture the way I did. And got to thinking about that. And so I showed you this book a while ago. This is a book I wrote. And it's got references to Lum in this book. There's a story in this book. It's called Lum and the Duck. And it's about another good friend of Mike's. And Mike and I both had another good friend. His name was George Gooden. We called him Bud. And he bird hunted with us too. And there's a story about Mike and Bud and I and our dogs and a duck that belonged to George's sister, Susie. She's married to Dave Parker and was hunting on his farm. And there's a story about Lum and that duck in this book. And like I already said, there's a story about Lum and my dad and that whistle in a video I've made. And there's other Lum stories, but enough of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this book, or maybe not this one, but if not this one like it, and I'm going to take this knife that belonged to Mike and these two whistles that belong to Mike, and I'm going to see to it that Amy gets those. I'll take them and give them to Amy because she's got a boy. I think his name's Andrew, and he ought to have this knife. Mike Bridwell's much as I've enjoyed having this knife, Mike Bridwell's grandsons should have this knife, not me. So my grandkids, they can have other knives that were mine. I'm going to see to it that Mike Bridwell's grandson gets this one. I'm a hard times guy. Till the next time, have a good day.